Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Dial It Up. Today we're going to be going over attacking multiple characters. Now there are several ways to be able to do this in the game of Heroclix, and we're going to be going over three of the more standard ways of going over that. Since we already had an episode on Pulse Wave, I'm not going to include that on this episode. I'll put a link in the dealies down here for you guys.
Too much idea.
Over. I took a link over to that episode. But for today, we're going to be looking at just a standard range attack with multiple targets, energy explosion, and quake. Now, those are outside of special powers. Those are the standard plain ways of attacking more than one character. So, starting off with just a standard range attack. To be able to attack more than one character with a ranged attack, you have to have more than one lightning bolt. Now those are the targets that are on the right side, left side, this side next to the damage on the character. The number of lightning bolts that they have is the number of characters that they can possibly target, so long as it falls within line of sight and range for the character as well. So one of the most key important things to remember when you're attacking more than one character is that that attack is simultaneous. So regardless of how you're doing it, through a standard range attack, energy explosion, quake, pulse wave, or a special power, you're going to only make one attack roll. So using all your regular calculations, figuring out your attack value, you make your attack roll, and then you're going to compare it to the defense value of every character that you are targeting for that attack. Now, this is important because there are certain situations where that attack roll might be different depending on who you're attacking. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But just going through the standard of how to actually do this. So while you're attacking, you're targeting depending on how many lightning bolts that you have, the targets that are printed on your base. Sometimes there are relics, resources, special powers that can give you more than what's printed on your base. But you're based on those targets. So you make a single attack roll and then compare it to each individual character that you're targeting. Now, because you're attacking more than one character, there are other powers that could get activated by this. Shape change, super senses, invulnerable, anything that's going to be on your opponent that would happen in a normal attack, it's just going to happen more than once because you're targeting more than one character. So once you've gotten to that and you figure out who you have actually successfully hit with your attack roll versus their multiple defenses, then you're getting into dealing damage. For just the standard range attack, when you're attacking more than one character, you have to take your damage value, which would be your printed value plus any replacements or modifications and any extras that you would get to damage dealt, and have to divide it up against every character that you have successfully hit. Now, if you have, say, a 4 printed damage, or you're dealing 4 damage, and you're targeting 3 characters, you can deal 0 damage to one character and 2 to another and 2 to the final person, or 1 to one, 1 to another, and 2 to the final. However you decide to divide up that damage, it's up to you. You can choose to, even if you successfully hit someone, you could choose not to deal damage to them. And that's just for a standard range one. Now, when we get into the powers that allow you to attack more than one character, the damage on that changes depending on what power you're using. So the next one we're going to go into is energy explosion. Now, energy explosion tends to be a little tricky because it does damage to characters that aren't your main primary target. So even if you have more than one lightning bolt or more than one target printed on your base, or through a game effect that's giving you more than one target, what you ideally want to do with energy explosion is not target everybody unless you have separate groups of characters that you're targeting. And why I say that is because when energy explosion activates, once you have successfully hit and you are assigning damage to a character, it creates an energy or an area of effect, much like the area of effect that we had from Pulse Wave, except the area of effect on energy explosion includes all untargeted characters that are adjacent to the initial targeted character. So if you have a bunch of people sitting next to each other, you're just targeting one person, and the energy explosion is going to splash onto the others. Why it's important to say untargeted is that if there are characters caught in an energy explosion AoE, they do not get to roll for shape change or any powers such like that shape change because they're not being targeted. So, but still with anything, because you are attacking multiple characters, you do still have to compare that attack value versus everybody's individual defense value. And then at that point, you have to do your standard power activations like super senses, and then once you're dealing damage, impervious, and so on and so forth. The other part of energy explosion that confuses a fair amount of newer players is when you're dealing damage based on the splash. Now, that one singular character that you initially hit and targeted, you're going to be dealing your regular damage value to that character and resolving that attack like you would any other attack. But for those characters caught in the AoE of energy explosion, they're being dealt damage equal to the printed targets on the character's base. So say if a character like Vibe gets energy explosion for whatever reason, he only has one target printed, so his splash, his AoE damage for energy explosion is only going to do 1. But you take somebody like Gambit here, who has 3 lightning bolts printed on his base. That is 3 damage he's going to be doing to each person adjacent to the initial target of the energy explosion within that area of effect. There is no way to change a printed target value. Your your targets can change based on relics, resources. Doc Ock's arm is one of them. One of Mandarin's rings allows you to do it, but that does not alter your printed targets. And energy explosion is very explicit about the fact that the splash damage is only printed targets. Sorry, people, Brainiac's ship is not going to be dealing 5 damage on his energy explosion. The other thing that I wanted to mention on energy explosion is that the character just has to be dealt damage or assigned damage to be able to create that area of effect, which means that so long as you get past shape change and super senses, even if the person has toughness, invulnerability, impervious, invincible, any way that's going to reduce that damage, if that damage was assigned to them, they're going to create an AoE, or you are allowed to create an AoE. It is a may on energy explosion, so you don't have to create that area of effect for it, but if you want to, you don't actually have to, your opponent doesn't actually have to take damage or click their dial to be able to create that splash of explosion to damage the people around them, which is actually really important. I used to do that all the time of attacking someone with toughness just so I could splash around them. So the next standard power that attacks more than one character is Quake, which is why Vibe's here, because he's traded Quake. Now, Quake works much like Pulse Wave does, but it attacks all adjacent characters to the attacker. So once this guy is surrounded, he can start attacking everybody that's around him. So once again, do your attack value, make one singular dice roll, and then compare it to all of the defense rolls, or all of the defense values against the people that are adjacent. And once again, that's going to go off on activating powers such as shape change and super senses and impervious. The one thing that's different on the Quake is that its damage value is locked at 2. So you're going to be dealing 2 damage to every single character that you successfully hit within that Quake. Okay, so the next thing that Quake does is that it generates knockback. Now that's going to be a knockback of 2 squares to each hit character. So whether the characters are actually taking damage or not, if they have been hit, so unless shape change or super senses goes off, those characters are going to get knocked back too. The other thing to note that's very important when you're dealing knockback damage is that the check for charge and combat reflexes is done once the character is hit. So if the character is showing charge or combat reflexes at that point before any damage is taken, they ignore the knockback. If not, they're getting knocked back. It doesn't matter if they get knocked into charge or combat reflexes. That check is made once the attack is actually successfully hit. So when you are attacking multiple characters, there is one thing that can trip you up, and it's only become more recently prevalent with a lot of traits and special powers, and that's if a character gets bonuses for attacking a certain character. So whether this is in a standard attack, energy explosion, a quake, a pulse wave, anything that's going to be targeting multiple characters, there is a chance that your attack value might actually be different depending on who you're attacking. Now, this comes into play with characters like Punisher from Deadpool when he gives out his guilty tokens, the chases from Invincible Iron Man where they get bonuses if they attack people that have shared keywords with them, like mystical or monster, or I know that was the Hunter or the Slayer that did that. So in that instance, if you have a bonus, it's only going to affect that one character. So even though you are making one simultaneous attack, one die roll, when you're calculating your attack value, it may actually be a little bit more depending on which characters you're targeting. So it's not a blanket modification, which would be like a perplex or something. It's just based on that singular character. So it might make it just a little bit easier to attack that one character, but it's still going to go in the process of just the one singular die roll. Okay, so that was attacking multiple characters and the different powers that you can use to be able to attack multiple characters. If there's anything you guys didn't think I covered properly, or you have any questions, comment down below, and we'll see you again next time for another episode of Dial It Up.
Married with Clix is brought to you by Majestic's Heroclix sales down in Costa Mesa, California. Right now, they're in the middle of storefront change. In the meantime, don't forget to check out their eBay store. If you check the link down below, they always have great Heroclix stuff at fantastic prices, and they'll ship just about anywhere.